بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الإمام البيقوني رحمه الله تعالى: أولها الصحيح وهو ما اتصل إسناده ولم يشد أو يعل، يرويه عدل ضابط عن مثله معتمد في ضبطه ونقله. والحسن المعروف طرقا وغدت رجاله لا كالصحيح اشتهرت، وكل ما عن رتبة الحسن خسر، فهو الضعيف وهو أقسام كثر. وما أضيف للنبي المرفوع وما لتابع هو المقطوع.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So we stopped at the end of the second line. Inshallah, today we will start with the third line. أولها الصحيح وهو ما اتصل إسناده ولم يشد أو يعل، يرويه عدل ضابط عن مثله معتمد في ضبطه ونقله. In these two lines, the Nazim Al-Bayquniyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, okay, he states the conditions of a sahih hadith, of an authentic hadith. One is a hadith authentic. How do we know a hadith is authentic? There are 5 conditions that must be met. If any one of these conditions are not met, the hadith is not considered sahih. It's not authentic. أولها الصحيح وهو ما اتصل. The first condition, write this down inshallah. The first condition is that it has to be connected. Al-ittisal. Al-ittisal. It is known in Arabic language as al-ittisal. It has to be connected. Alright? What do we mean by al-ittisal, or it has to be connected? That the person who's narrating this hadith, first of all, the person who's narrating this hadith from, he has to have heard it from him directly. Okay? And the same goes for the person that he narrated from. Who he narrated from, all the way to the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? It has to be connected. So if any one person jumps one person, okay? I narrate from Muhammad, who narrates from Ahmad. If I directly say I narrated from Ahmed, it's what? It's not considered connected. Okay? If I say, for example, if I claim to hear from somebody that I never heard from, even though we've met, then that is not connected. Okay? That chain is not connected. It has to be somebody that you directly heard from, and that person directly heard from somebody else, who heard from somebody else, all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. Alright, if there's anything wrong, if you didn't hear or somebody else didn't hear somewhere during the chain, then it's not authentic. Is that clear? And inshallah, this will become clear later on as we go on and we take practical examples. Yes?
How about like chains breaks?
The chain breaks, then it's not authentic.
No, I mean like it stops.
It stops at where? At the Prophet ﷺ?
No, I mean like it's going forward, right? And then like someone dies without passing.
Then unfortunate. That's unfortunate. But the ahadith that which they weren't passed on, they're very little. Like that person passed away without passing it on, that's very little, and that's very hard to determine. Aslan, you see what I'm trying to say? And a lot of times, it's not like every single person only narrated to one person. We have a group like this, for example. All right, a sheikh narrates to a group of students. Alright, one of them dies. Okay, it's not a problem. There's 19 others. There's 20 others. There's 30 others. You see what I'm trying to say? Okay? Only very rarely do you find a hadith that has only one person who narrated from another person. So on and so forth. Alright? So for example, to give you guys an example, the famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, collected by Bukhari and Muslim, the hadith of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, in which the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And another narration, بِالنِّيَّةِ. Right? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. That all actions are based on intentions. Okay. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was the only one who heard from the Prophet ﷺ this hadith. No other companion heard this hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? There is a narration through the chain of Usama bin Zayd radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, where this chain is extremely weak. Okay? But through Umar al-Khattab, he was the only one that heard it from the Prophet ﷺ. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala an, he only narrated it to one of the tabi'een. He only told one person this hadith. Alright? He only told one person this hadith. Alright? And that was Alqamah. Okay, that was Alqamah ibn Waqqas al-Laythi. Alqamah, he only told this hadith to one person. And that person was Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. Look at it, that's three levels in a row. Prophet ﷺ only told Umar. Umar only told Alqamah. Alqamah only told Muhammad Ibrahim at-Taymi. You don't stop there. Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi only told one person. And that person was Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. So that's 4 levels in a row, right? Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, he decided to tell the whole world. He told the whole world after that. He told everybody. Right? You have Sufyan ibn Uyayna narrated from and others. Okay? From Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, he's the one who made it popular. They say this hadith, although it is famous, but this hadith, the muhaddithin, they say it is min aghrab al-ahadith. Alright? This hadith, when you have 4 different tabaqat, 4 different levels in a row, only one person narrated it, very seldom will you find a hadith like this. See what I'm trying to say? So imagine just 1 level. You see what I'm trying to say? Imagine just 2 levels. You have 4 levels and that's rare. And on top of that, it's still a famous hadith. A lot of us are not aware that only Umar heard it from the Prophet ﷺ, and Umar only told one person, and it was Alqamah, and Alqamah only told one person. You see what I'm trying to say? So, and inshallah we'll take other examples as we go along. Okay? So the first condition of an authentic hadith, that it has to be connected. That the person hears from somebody that he can hear from. He can't narrate from somebody who passed away he never met. Somebody who died before he was even born. Okay? Or somebody he never even met, somebody in a different country. Right? You can't. Alright? That's not connected. It's disconnected. So it has to be connected. Okay? There is a difference between Bukhari and Muslim. Rahimahumullah. Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. Imam Bukhari, he makes it a condition that we have to actually know that the two people met. For it to be considered authentic, the 2 people have to have met. Okay? And Imam Muslim says, no, we don't have to know that they actually met, but it's enough that they have the ability to meet and that they lived during the same time. And there's more, you know what I'm saying? But Bukhari, he's even stricter. He says, no, we have to know for sure that they met. Okay? And that is why Imam Bukhari, according to the overwhelming majority of the scholars, his book, Sahih al-Bukhari, is more authentic than Imam Muslim, Sahih Muslim. Because of that, because it's more, when you make it more strict, what does that mean? Your margin for error is even smaller. Okay? There are a group of scholars from Western, from Spain, Andalusia, and Morocco, and Al-Maghrib al-Islami, from them Abu Ali al-Naysaburi, who say that Sahih Muslim is more authentic than Sahih Bukhari. Okay? But they are a minority of the scholars. The majority of the scholars, in fact some scholars, they say it's a consensus that Sahih Bukhari is more authentic than Sahih Muslim. And that is why they say in 2 lines of poetry, they say تشاجر قوم في البخاري ومسلم لدي وقالوا أي ذين تقدموا فقلت لقد فاق البخاري صحة كما فاق في حسن الصناعة مسلم. You know, there's a dispute between people, which one is more authentic, Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim? Okay? So I told them that in terms of authenticity, Bukhari is more authentic. But in terms of Husn al-Sina'a, the way Imam Muslim organized his book and the way he put it together, then Imam Muslim is better. Okay? So, going back to the original points, Al-Sahih, Ittisal, connected chain, there's a difference between Bukhari and Muslim. Bukhari is more stricter. Muslim, he provides more leeway. Okay? But at the end of the day, one of the conditions is that it has to be connected. إسناده ولم يشذ أو يعل. The second condition is that the hadith must not be shadh. What does this term shadh mean? What does a shadh mean? الشاذ يعني the ulama they have different definitions for الشاذ, but probably one of the most famous definitions is that it is مخالفة الثقة لمن هو أوثق منه. Okay, when you have two narrators, okay, and I'll give you guys an example so it can make sense. When you have two narrators, they are both reliable, they are both trustworthy, but their hadith contradicts. One says yes, one says no. One says 10, and another says 20. They contradict. Okay? But one of them is more reliable than the other. Okay? They're both reliable, but one of them is more reliable than the other. We take by the one who's more reliable and more trustworthy than the one who's less reliable and less trustworthy. He's still reliable. Alright? Think of it to make it easy for you guys so you guys can understand. Think of an all-pro, alright? And an all-star, okay? Or an all-star and a starter, okay? A starter is still a good player, right? But an all-star is a better player. Who are you going to take you're going to take this one, right? Same thing, alright? So if you have two reliable narrators, one of them is more reliable than the other, we take by the one who is more reliable, okay? So if the hadith, alright, contradicts somebody who is more reliable, then we take by what? We take by the other hadith. And it is one of the conditions of sahih that the hadith cannot be shadh. Alright, so you guys can give an example. So I can give you guys an example. This example you probably won't find in any book that I know of. Okay? My research led me to this. For example, during Hajj, okay, there's a hadith collected by Imam Muslim. Hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah. It's a long hadith. One of the longest hadiths in Sahih Muslim, if not the longest. Alright? In a few pages. Okay? Jabir ibn Abdullah, in this hadith, he talks about the Hajj of the Prophet ﷺ from beginning till the very end. The Prophet ﷺ, he left Medina on the 25th day of Dhul Qa'dah. Alright? And he came to Mecca on the 4th day of Dhul Hijjah. Okay? Up until the end of the Hajj. Talk about from beginning to end, he was with the Prophet ﷺ. In this hadith, he mentions that on the day of Arafah, the Prophet ﷺ, right, he gave khutbah, then he prayed Dhuhr and Asr. He gave khutbah, then he prayed what? Dhuhr and Asr. You guys with me? This hadith is collected by Imam Muslim, authority of Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Alright. We put this on the side. We have another hadith collected by Abu Dawood in his As-Sunan. Right? On the authority of Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Okay? This hadith states that on the day of Arafah, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam prayed Dhuhr and Asr first, then he gave khutbah. Notice the difference? The first one, he gave khutbah, then he prayed Dhuhr and Asr. This one, he gave khutbah, prayed Dhuhr and Asr, then he gave khutbah. Notice the difference between both narrations. Both narrations contradict. Okay, what do we do here? Some scholars like Ibn Hazm, they tried bringing both the hadith together. But what seems to be more correct is that this second hadith narrated by Abu Dawood is considered shadh. Because the chain of narrators, the narrators that narrated this hadith collected by Imam Muslim are way stronger than the ones in this hadith. Okay? So this hadith is considered sahih and this hadith is considered shadh. You guys with me? Okay. So a hadith cannot be shadh. For it to be sahih, for it to be authentic, it cannot be shadh. It cannot contradict another hadith. Is that clear? طيب. That is the second condition. The third condition, أو يعل إسناده ولم يشذ أو يعل. What does al-illa mean? The third condition, before we talk about what al-illa means, al-illa, the hadith cannot have a illa. And al-illa is a hidden deficiency within the hadith. a hidden deficiency within the hadith. Okay? The hadith in its appearance, when you look at it first, when you look at the chain, you look at the wording, right? It seems to be authentic. It doesn't have anything wrong with it. But there is a hidden deficiency that only certain scholars, not all of the scholars, only certain scholars can understand. Alright? And this is one of the hardest types of hadith to study and to understand. And only a few in Islamic history have mastered this part of hadith. Alright? Only a few. There are a handful. You can count them with two hands. Alright? Like Shu'bat ibn al-Hajjaj, Abu al-Bistam. Like Abdul Rahman ibn Mahdi. Like Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Like Al-Imam al-Bukhari, Muhammad ibn Ismail, Abu Abdullah al-Bukhari. Like Yahya ibn Ma'in. The likes of them, only a few scholars that actually have mastered the science. Even some other muhaddithin, some other scholars of hadith, they're not very well grounded in this, in finding out these hidden deficiencies. And inshallah, al-illah, it will come as a separate line and we'll talk about it in detail later on. But for now, just understand that it means that there's a hidden deficiency within the hadith. Okay? Alright. The fourth condition, يرويه عدل ضابط عن مثله. The fourth condition is that the narrator has to be a trustworthy narrator. Somebody who's a adl. Now, how do we determine somebody who's trustworthy and somebody who's not? How do we determine this? Something that's pretty tough, because all human beings sin, right? Right? You cannot say any particular person does a sin. Okay? In fact, Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, he used to say that I don't know of anybody who did not sin except Yahya ibn Zakaria, alayhi salam, the Prophet of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Everybody sins, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam informed us. But there's a difference between people who sin openly, outwardly, without any shame, who sin constantly, and people who try their best, they strive their best to conceal their sins and to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're not constantly indulged in sin. Okay? So when we say a trustworthy person, we're talking about somebody who's actively trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's known upon khair. He's known for somebody who doesn't go around boasting about their sins. He tries to conceal as much as he can. Whenever he falls into it, tries to repent. Is not constantly involved in any type of sin. Okay? So somebody has to be trustworthy in their religion, in their deen. Okay? We don't take it from anybody. Okay? Somebody who is a major sinner openly and boasts about it, right? And this is a reality that we see today with the introduction of these new social media gadgets that we have. Okay, everybody's boasting about what they do and openly sinning, showing and broadcasting it to the world. It's unfortunate. Allah musta'an. Okay, but the point is that you don't take hadith from anybody. The person has to be trustworthy. Okay, that is the fourth condition. The fifth condition is mu'tamadun fi dhabtihi wa naqlihi. This is very important. Okay, the fifth one is that this person has the capability to memorize and preserve hadith. The capability to memorize and preserve hadith. Okay? And we look at people, not everybody has the same memory. Some people, their memories are sharp, right? Some people, when they're preserving, like right now, somebody's taking notes. Somebody takes better notes than others, right? You have somebody, when they take notes, they're great. Some people, they're lackluster. Some people are average, right? So somebody who preserves hadith in terms of writing or memorization. Okay, in terms of memorization or writing. The person has to be, right, a good memorizer, has good memory, okay? And can write good as well. Not everybody can write down hadith exactly the way he heard it. The way the person heard it, to write it down, not everybody can do that. But this is a condition, okay? And this is something very important, because somebody being trustworthy, that's not enough. That's not enough at all, okay? In fact, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, rahimahullah ta'ala, he used to say, I've never seen, لم أرى من الصالحين أكثر منه في الحديث. I've never seen more people who used to make mistakes in hadith than the salihin, than the righteous people. Alright? Than the righteous people. Just because somebody is righteous and is in the masjid and is praying, doesn't mean we give him a green card. Hey, you can narrate hadith. We take hadith from you. No. One of the conditions is that that person has to have what? Has to have good memory, has to have good ilm. And a lot of salihin, especially in the past, a lot of righteous people, they used to fall into so many mistakes. And sometimes into fabrications. And they used to lie upon the Prophet ﷺ due to their ignorance. Okay? So, you have to be trustworthy and you got to be what? You got to be reliable. You got to have a good memory. You have to have the ability to preserve hadith. That is very, very important. And today, the world that we live in right now, okay, we see something similar. Okay? What do majority of the Muslims do? When they have a question and they want to ask about the religion, do they look at the qualifications of the person and if the person has actual knowledge, or do they look on their religious background, how, if they're religious or not? They look at if they're religious. If they see somebody with a beard, okay, or not, or sisters in the masjid, okay, what do? They ask him a question. Hey, you're religious, let me ask you a question. This is a problem. It's a huge problem. You don't ask everybody. You ask people that are qualified, people who are scholars, all right, or mashayikh. That's what you do. You look at their trustworthiness from one side, and you look at their ilm from another side. Okay, that's how we can apply this today. طيب. These are the 5 conditions of an authentic hadith. All right. If you want to know if a hadith is authentic or not, if you find these 5 conditions, the first is that it's connected. The person heard from somebody or heard from somebody all the way to the Prophet ﷺ, or to the companions, whatever it may be, wherever the chain ends. The second condition is that it is not shadh. Alright? It does not contradict somebody who's more reliable. The third condition, it doesn't have any hidden deficiency. Okay, which we will talk about later on, inshallah ta'ala, in detail. The fourth condition is that the narrator has to be trustworthy. And the fifth condition is that they have to have good memory and the capability to preserve hadith, whether in writing or through memorization. طيب, the fifth line, وَالْحَسَنُ الْمَعْرُوفُ طُرْقًا وَغَدَتْ رِجَالُهُ لَا كَالصَّحِيحِ اشْتَهَرَتْ. Second type of hadith is al-hasan. Al-hasan. What is al-hasan hadith? When they say hadith is hasan, hadith is sound. Alright? Al-hasan, you can call it a hasan. It's in the middle between a sahih hadith and a da'if hadith, an authentic hadith and a weak hadith. It's right in the middle. Or you can say that a hadith in general are divided into 2: a hadith that are accepted and a hadith that are rejected. And the ones that are accepted, right, if it's a high level, it's called sahih, and if it's a low level accepted, it's called hasan. Okay? A hasan hadith is a hadith that is accepted in terms of it's accepted. It's a sound hadith. But the only problem is it's not, the narrators who narrate these hadith, they're not as strong as a sahih hadith. As in all them here, he says. Okay? So this pertains to the last 2 conditions of sahih hadith. Okay? When it comes to memory, you have people that have like photographic memory, right? You give them a book, they'll memorize it in a day, 2 days. You have some people that are okay, they're pretty good. You have some guys that are average, and then you have the rest. Okay? The people that are average, for example, that most of the time they're good, but sometimes they have their slips. These people are known as, or sometimes they have their slips. These people, their hadith is categorized as hasan. It's not sahih. They're not as strong as somebody who narrates a hadith that is sahih. Is that clear? Yes. Or in terms of trustworthiness, in terms of their adl, their adala, okay? They may not be as righteous as some of the narrators, right? And how do we know somebody is adl, somebody's adl or not? For example, is less trustworthy than somebody else. For example, I'll give you guys an example. An example is somebody who indulges in something known as khawarim al-muru'ah. Okay? Khawarim al-muru'ah is a term which the muhaddithin use to say that a person indulges in activities or actions or even sayings that messes with somebody's integrity. Like he does something, that person does something that is not respected in society, that somebody who's respected doesn't do. Okay? And this obviously depends from culture to culture, country to country, city to city, time to time, era to era. Okay? So for example, in the old times, eating in public, that was like that was a no can do. You can't do that. Eating in public. Only like people not respected would do that, like eat in front of everybody. Okay? People will eat privately. They won't do it in public. Nowadays it's not the case. People eat in restaurants, people go, whatever, in their cars, whatnot. It's not as a big problem. Back in the old days, if they see somebody who's eating in public, then their hadith, alright, most likely is not accepted. If it happens once, it's not a problem. But if it happens constantly, somebody who does something like this constantly, it's not accepted. Because it's not something that somebody who's respected in society, somebody of character and integrity, does. Alright? I'll give you an example. In a public setting like this, and somebody burps very loud. Right? Very loud and doesn't say excuse me. That's very what? That's very disrespectful. Okay? Something of the sort. They call it khawar al-muru'ah. Somebody who does that often, obviously once or twice, somebody who slips, it's not a problem. But somebody who does it often and makes it his habit, then that's a problem. It messes with his trustworthiness. It messes with his adala. Tayyib. Alright? That's an example. Somebody who indulges in khawar al-muru'ah. Alright? Another example, so I can give you something that they used to look in the old days, is somebody who is always staring. Always looking around in public, everywhere, and then he stares at somebody. Follow him all along. You see some people still doing that today, right? They're just sitting somewhere, they're posting up anywhere, and they're just looking at everybody, just staring at everything that goes by, right? Looking around, always looking around, right? They say this messes with the integrity of a person. Somebody who is respected, somebody who is honored, doesn't do actions like this, all right? And this this is not something that's concrete. This matter differs from, like we said, era to era, time to time, place to place, country to country, so on and so forth. طيب. Alright. So Al-Hasan, this is what the Nazim, this is the definition that he gives for Al-Hasan. And this is the same definition that Al-Imam Abu Sulaiman Hamd Al-Khattabi gives. Alright, in his book Ma'alim Al-Sunan. This is the same definition that he gives. Another definition that they use for Al-Hasan is somebody who, and is very similar, somebody who's dhabt, who's in terms of preserving hadith, or writing, or memorizing hadith, is not as strong. Alright? It is not as strong. This is, any narrator who has this, is what? His hadith is considered Hasan. It's still accepted, but it's not considered Sahih. It is Hasan. Okay? والحسن المعروف طرقا وغدت رجاله لا كالصحيح اشتهرت. طيب. Let's piggyback a little bit to Al-Sahih and Al-Hasan. Alright? Al-Sahih, we can, categorize into two types. Al-Sahih, there's two types. Two types of Al-Sahih. Al-Sahih لذاته and Al-Sahih لغيره. الصحيح لذاته and الصحيح لغيره. Okay? الصحيح لذاته is a hadith in which by itself, that hadith, that one chain of narration by itself is authentic. Like the hadith that we gave in Sahih Muslim, hadith Jabir, in which it describes the Hajj of the Prophet ﷺ. Or the earlier hadith that we gave, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. That's an authentic hadith by itself. This chain, this narrate by itself, it's authentic. Alright? The second type is as-sahih li ghayrihi. An authentic hadith that is authentic if it's put with another hadith, with another chain of narration. Alright? So for example, they say, if you have a hadith that is hasan, a hadith that is hasan, and we already defined what is hasan, and you have the same hadith with a different chain of narration, but the same wording, the same hadith, okay? Same concept, it discusses the same topic, same concept, everything. You put these two hadiths together, all of a sudden they become sahih li ghayrihi. Okay? So you have two hadiths. You have a hadith that is hasan. Alright, you guys with me? You have a hadith that is hasan by itself. Another hadith that is hasan. They both have the same wording, but two different chains. Okay, and this is possible, like we said. Shaykh, he comes and he narrates a hadith to tens of people, hundreds of people. Those people, they tell it to other people. You're going to have different chains of narration. Right? These two chains of narration that are both hasan by themselves. This is by hasan by itself, and this hasan by itself. When you put them together, they become sahih. They become sahih li ghayrihi. Then you have al-hasan. Al-hasan, you can also divide it into two. Al-hasan li dhatihi and al-hasan li ghayrihi. Al-hasan li dhatihi is a hadith by itself is hasan, without putting any chain of narration with it. By itself, it's hasan. And al-hasan li ghayrihi is when you have two hadiths that are not too weak, but are weak, but not too weak. When you put them together, they become hasan li ghayrihi. Okay? And inshallah, this will become, we'll clarify this even more as we go along the text. So don't worry. This will make sense as we move on. Alright? Just know that this taqseem, this categorization exists. Sahih is two types. Sahih li dhati and sahih li ghayri. And al-hasan is two types. Al-hasan li dhati and al-hasan li ghayrihi. Okay. The sixth line. وَكُلُّ مَا الرُّتْبَةِ الْحُسْنِ قَصُرُ فَهُوَ الضَّعِيفُ وَهُوَ أَقْسَى مَنْ كُثُرُ. طيب. He says here that anything that is not hasan or sahih, then automatically it is considered da'if. It is considered weak. The hadith is weak. And there are many different types of weak hadith. And they're all going to come inshallah. Al-mu'dal, al-munqati', al-mursal, right? Al-munkar, al-shadh, al-mu'allal. These are all different types of weak hadith. Okay? Any hadith that doesn't have any one of the five conditions, doesn't meet any one of the five conditions, put it in the bush. It's weak. Okay? It's weak. Alright? And there are many different types of weak hadith. There are hadith that are extremely weak. Extremely weak. There are hadiths that are fabrications, al-mawdu', complete fabrications. Yes, there are some people who are evil and they will lie upon the Prophet. They lied. There are people who lied upon the Prophet. You have people till today lying on the Prophet. Okay? And they are complete fabrications. Okay? And there are a mixture of people. Some of them are evil. Some of them, they tend to do good. They're actually righteous people. They tend to do good, but they did it in the wrong way. So for example, a story they say of a righteous man from the early times, in the times of the Salaf. This righteous man, right, he was a abid, he was a worshipper. And he used to read the Quran constantly. And he's seen people being busy with hadith, narrating hadith, learning about fiqh, and so on and so forth. So then he noticed how people are staying away from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not reading the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're busy with hadith, and they're busy with the sunnah, and they're busy with other stuff, other sciences of Islam. So what he did to attract a lot of people to the Quran, he fabricated a hadith for every surah. So for every surah, he came up with a hadith from his own pockets. Al-Fatiha, whoever reads Al-Fatiha, he'll get this reward. Whoever reads Surah Al-Ikhlas, he'll go to Jannah or something. He'll come up with every surah he put down, he fabricated something. Right? Until obviously the muhaddithin, the scholars, they found out. Alright? And they found out about this man. Okay? they went back, obviously the chain of, when he narrates this hadith, he makes up a chain of narration. He claims that he heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody all the way to the Prophet ﷺ. But the scholars, ilm al-hadith is very complex and sophisticated, alright? And if one actually studies it deeply, they'll see how deeply rooted the science is, right? They're eventually going to find out. They're eventually going to find out where the weak part of hadith is. So when the scholars, they found out that this righteous man who everybody looked up to in society was the one who fabricated and lied upon the Prophet ﷺ, they asked him, why did you do this? He said, Wallahi, I didn't want people to be busy with other stuff. I want to connect people with the Quran. He had a good intention, but the way this person did it was wrong. Okay? And that shows you that having a good intention is not enough. A lot of people have good hearts. A lot of people intend to do good, but they don't do it the right way. That doesn't mean that we accept everything they do. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Then you must do great actions. And He didn't do what? He didn't say what? A lot of actions. Because some of the actions you may do are not according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, are not according to the correct path. Okay? And the Prophet ﷺ, he told us in a hadith that is mutawatir, that is widespread. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that the scholars, they say more than 80 of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ narrate this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar." Whoever lies upon me intentionally, then let him reserve his place in hellfire. So this righteous man, look what he got himself into. You see what I'm trying to say? So the point is, good intentions is not enough. All right. There are fabrications. There are hadith that are extremely weak. There are hadith that are borderline weak. Okay, they're on the border and the cusp of being hasan. They're not, but they're weak. They just missed, right? They just missed the target. Okay, and we'll take these different types, inshallah, as we go along. وَمَا أُضِيفَ لِلنَّبِي الْمَرْفُوعُ وَمَا لِتَابِعٍ هُوَ الْمَقْطُوعُ. In the 7th line, he says, and whatever is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ is known as al-marfu'. This is another type of hadith. Another type of hadith is known as al-marfu'. Al-marfu'. Okay? Al-marfu' is anything that the Prophet ﷺ said, or did, or approved of. Okay? According to the definition that we took earlier. Okay? Anything that is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ is known as al-marfu'. And anything that is attributed to a follower of the companion, a tabi'i, is known as al-maqtu'. And anything that is attributed to a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he doesn't mention it here, but he'll mention it later on, is al-mawquf. So we have 3 similar terms. The first term is al-marfu'. And al-marfu' is anything that is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ. When you have a chain of narration and the chain of narration ends at the Prophet ﷺ, this is known as al-marfu'. Like the question you asked about earlier. And any chain of narration that ends at the companion of the Prophet ﷺ is known as al-mawquf. And it's going to come later, inshallah. And anything that stops, is attributed and stops, its chain stops at the tabi'i, a follower of the companion, a student of the companion, this is known as al-maqtu'. Okay, we must know these terms. We must memorize them. Okay, so that later on, when we read books of hadith, we know what the ulama are talking about, the scholars are talking about. Let's end it there, inshaAllah ta'ala. And we will continue with the 8th line. وَالْمُسْنَدُ الْمُتَّصِلُ الْإِسْنَادِ مِنْ رَوِيهِ حَتَّى الْمُصْطَفَى وَلَمْ يَبِنْ. Next week, inshaAllah ta'ala. Na'am.
What was tabi'in?
Huh?
Tabi'in was
What was that?
tabi'in was
The tabi'i is al-maqtu'. Al-maqtu' is whatever the tabi'i said. Al-maqtu'. And we must differentiate between al-maqtu' and al-munqati'. 2 terms that are very similar in terms of pronunciation. And sometimes they're even used interchangeably by some scholars. They're used but al-maqtu' as mastaqarra in the mutaakhirin, as the late scholars have said, al-maqtu' is anything that the tabi'in say. Alright? And if you look at books like Musannaf Ibn Abi Shaybah and Musannaf Abdul Razzaq, you find a lot of ahadith that are maqtu'. A lot of hadith are maqtu' and mawquf as well. The book Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, you find a lot of statements of the companions and the followers of the companions. Okay? So whenever you hear قال الحسن البصري, Al-Hasan al-Basri said, Al-Hasan al-Basri is from Tabi'een. Whenever you hear قال Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, whenever you hear Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib said this and this and that, whenever you hear any Tabi'i say anything, any statement, then this is maqtu'. If you hear قال Umar radiyallahu ta'ala an, then this is what? This is mawquf. But if you hear قال Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it is al-marfu'. Inshallah we'll end it there. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.